मेरा नाम पंकज चड्ढा है। मेरी हवा 626 है। मेरा विभाग यांत्रिक अभियांत्रिकी है। मैं इंदौर से हूँ और शिवालिक हॉस्टल का वासी हूँ।
जोमैटो है कि जोमैटो है?
अरे यार, अभी तुम यूएस में जाओगे तो जोमैटो है। इंडिया में जोमैटो है। ब्रिटिश इंडिया में जोमैटो ही था। But yeah, you have a lot of faith,
right?
Because everyone around you is going to convince you to not do it.
Absolutely.
Including the people who care for you. More so the people who care for you.
Right.
Foosball is not a skill-based game, right? You need to develop the power in the wrist to be able to play really well. And the reactions and the familiarity, ball kahan jayegi. Clearly, I spent a lot of time on the foosball board. But I remember we used to spend a lot of time on the foosball board and go home late. At one time I was very good, right, at the foosball table in that office.
Right. So just for the Bain people, this was after the working hours.
Yeah.
In the office.
Work comes first.
Work comes first all the time. Okay.
That's what we tried to do.
Right.
My brother also came to IIT Delhi. He was in Nilgiri, in fact.
Right.
I also thankfully ended up getting into IIT Delhi. Otherwise, my life would have been very, very difficult. Thanks to my brother. Sure. So while at Bain, if I remember right, Dipinder was already working on a menu pages kind of an idea. Because even before that, in 2005, when I was still on campus, there was a website which was started by Dipinder and some of his friends called Foodlet.
Okay.
They tried to do online ordering. It didn't work, they had shut it. But then again in 2007-8, he had already started to work on bringing that back or in some other version.
Right.
So he was already working on a menu page plus a review portal. And that's when we also met in Bain.
Okay.
So we didn't know each other at IIT.
Oh, all right.
He was 3 years ahead of me.
Right.
So we had no interaction at IIT.
Right.
The first time we met was at Bain.
Right.
And then he sort of shared the idea that he was thinking of launching this, and if I can help him in marketing. And then when you start seeing the results, then it becomes a drug, and you want to do more and more of it.
Right.
And we started to work together to market it, to enlarge the database. At that time, it was only search and discovery. So we used to go around and collect menu cards. We used to scan them in office over the weekends, and we used to upload it to a website called foodebay.com.
Right.
And it started to do really well. We started getting some interest for restaurants to advertise on us. So that was sort of the first time we saw that, this can become a business. And for about a year and a half, we were still in Bain and doing this on the weekends.
Right.
We used to call up our friends कि यार तो पुणे में है, बॉम्बे में है, मेन्यू इकट्ठे कर दे. In fact, if you go back, the person who helped in launching our Mumbai website, the first version was a very dear batchmate of mine, Amol Parashar.
All right.
He's also a very well-known alumni, a very well-known and established actor now. Similarly, Pune was launched by this classmate of mine who was a journalist and had time in the day.
Right.
Yeah, it's actually more on the instinct and the gut. You can't plan for these things.
Right.
Serendipity.
Yeah.
कहते हैं ना जिसे.
Right.
It's more of that. If you plan these things कि मैं ये करूँगा, फिर step 2 ये होगा, उतनी देर में जो कंपनी है वो भी ऐसा रूल निकाल देगी कि मुझको sabbatical या कुछ ऐसे मिल जाएगा.
Right.
You don't have all those things in your hands.
Right.
So it's always happens by chance, and then the call you take by the gut is what drives you. I've hardly met someone who's built a company for 10 plus years, who planned to do something
Right.
and then, I mean,
Right.
कि कोई और जॉब में था, फिर उसको पता था ये होगा, कभी नहीं पता होता. Around that time in 2010, we realized that eBay.com, they had owned the eBay trademark,
Right.
or whatever, and a lot of other websites which were ending with Bay, who were trying to be like marketplaces or platforms, they were made to change the name,
Right.
or they were made to do something to the domain or the brand name. And at that time, our investors, InfoEdge, had also shared the same concern. So we knew we had to change the name. We were looking for different domain names available.
Right.
So when you have a website, the domain name is very important. Right. More so than the brand at times. And we found a Zomato.com available. It was very expensive at that time. We maxed out 4 credit cards to pay for the domain name. If I remember right. All of it, and we were all very young, so the credit limits were not much.
Obviously, yes.
But we bought the domain name, and the reason for taking up Zomato was that it was very catchy. It was Zomato, three sounds, 6 letters.
Right.
Very easy to spell what you hear.
Right.
And also you could explain it to people like it's a tomato with a Z.
Right.
So very easy to make a connect with food.
Right.
While being a non-food brand name on its own.
Right.
So that's why we went on with Zomato as the brand.
Right. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Dil Se IIT Delhi. Today we have a very special alumni with us, Pankaj Chaddah, who is the co-founder of Zomato and Shift. Welcome, Pankaj, back to the campus.
Thank you, Shaurya.
How does it feel to be back in the campus?
I actually keep coming back. I play tennis on the new tennis courts.
Nice.
So, and I now live close by,
Right.
10 to 15 minutes away. So I actually come here at least once a week. It's always amazing.
Comparing to your time at IIT Delhi, how different is it now over here at the campus?
I think it looks a lot more accessible to get to, a lot of facilities. I'll give you an example. In fact, 1 year after we passed out, or 2 years after we passed out, the football field got lit up.
Right.
And we had to stop playing by 6 p.m. But then, we saw that the kids were playing till 10 or 11 p.m. or even later. I think one worry that you always feel, that is the flip side of scaling up education, is that, too many people, is the quality still the same?
Yeah.
But having worked with alumni over the years and having employed a lot of them, I think the process of selection and then the 4 years of rigor still produces a lot of good quality professionals as a campus.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. As you said, now obviously the facilities have improved and increased as well. So do you feel कि compared to पहले के time से और अब, the overall development also of students has increased? Maybe it's become more, overall development as to just academic side, but versus overall development.
I think it has. I think people pass out as more rounded individuals.
Right.
I also, this might just be a slight generation change as well, where the reason I'm saying this could be a generation change is what I mean. But I think students over the last few years have expected a lot more
Right.
than we had expectation from their professional lives.
Right. Right.
Sometimes it ends in dissonance.
Right.
Yeah, but those are just the cycles, and those are cycles that come and go.
Right.
We were very lucky to have passed out in 2008
Right.
7,
Right.
which was the best employment cycle. All of my classmates got great jobs.
Right.
1 year later, it was the worst on campus year.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I think these are cycles. It's just that the last 5 years have been very nice to students, and this year, as an example, is not being too nice.
Yeah.
So it's like a correction year.
Right. Right.
But otherwise, the people I meet, they're more confident to talk to than I ever was.
Absolutely.
Or a lot of people around me ever was.
So it's definitely for the better. Even at an institute like IIT Delhi, which is so academically oriented, I think overall development obviously really boosts up the confidence of the students as well.
Yeah.
That's really great to hear. Again, going back to a life that was before all of this, how did you get into IIT Delhi? आपके कहाँ से आया thought? Was it someone who told you to look into that? Did you have an idea already, a preconceived notion कि okay, this is what I want to do, this is the direction I want to take? How did you come about IIT Delhi?
So to give you some background, my dad's a physicist, my mom's a doctor. So and I have an elder brother who's 6 years elder to me.
Right.
We always liked science and mathematics. So it was a direction that we knew we would be getting educated in. Once you take that as a stream, you try to get to what is the best available destination for you. And that's what we tried to do.
Right.
My brother also came to IIT Delhi. He was in Nilgiri, in fact.
Right.
I also thankfully ended up getting into IIT Delhi. Otherwise, my life would have been very, very difficult. Thanks to my brother.
So you have been playing tennis ever since you were a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been.
Great. And मैंने भी सुना है काफी कि पहले यहाँ पे जो बाहर ढाबे होते थे, पराठे बहुत टेस्टी होते थे और सुबह तक मिलते थे वो पराठे आपको, which was, I'm sure,
that's true,
a delightful experience, especially for engineers, budding engineers.
Yeah.
पूरा दिन करके मेहनत, चलो पराठे खाते हैं हम लोग सब. That was
मेहनत is debatable, but रात को उठना हो तो पराठे मिलते थे. Then there used to be horror stories कि यार उसके पराठे
अच्छा निकलते थे तब भी.
हाँ, फिर 2-3 हफ्ते नहीं जाते थे. फिर then used to be like यार कि और कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है. हाँ, तो चलो
खाना तो है ही, है ना, और ढाबे पे यहीं पे मिलता है तो कहीं पे जाना पड़ेगा. Nice. उस टाइम पे was the SDA market and all there? यहाँ पे तब तो कुछ नहीं होएगा, I'm guessing इस टाइम.
Then I think एक शेफाली स्वीट्स कुछ ऐसा नाम था, where you now have वाघ बकरी,
टाटा वाला वाघ बकरी.
तो but होता था, but I only explored it in my third year and fourth year.
Third year. Right. Wonderful. That's really good. Okay, so you have told us that you're from Shivalik. Any slangs that were there in the hostel? आपका कोई pet name था? Some anecdotes that you can share with us for the hostel life over there.
No, I think I was very confident कि सबके भी vulgar और dismissive या demeaning pet names बन जाएं. With a surname like mine, you can never get another name. So I always had the nickname Chaddah, Chadde, and all that. So I still have the same.
Right.
I never had any other nickname. There were people who were luckier than me who got very amusing nicknames.
And they stick on with life, yeah? They stick forever.
I think after a while you start to respect the other person and not use those words very publicly.
Especially around the family, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
You don't
Once, their family happens to be around, you can't call them those things again.
Yeah, tab actually censorship शुरू हो जाती है फिर at that stage. Yeah,
that's true.
Great, excellent. All right, so moving on to post IIT Delhi. Obviously, you joined Bain after IIT Delhi. It was a college placement.
Yes,
right. It was a college placement. So while at Bain, how did you come about the idea of Zomato? What was the thing that got you into Zomato?
Sure. So while at Bain, if I remember right, Dipinder was already working on a menu pages kind of an idea, because even before that, in 2005, when I was still on campus, there was a website which was started by Dipinder and some of his friends called Foodlet.
Okay.
They tried to do online ordering. It didn't work, they had shut it. But then again in 2007-8, he had already started to work on bringing that back, or in some other version.
Right.
So he was already working on a menu page plus a review portal. And that's when we also met in Boom.
Okay.
So we didn't know each other at IIT.
Oh, all right.
He was 3 years ahead of me.
Right.
So we had no interaction at IIT.
Right.
The first time we met was at Bain.
Right.
And then he sort of shared the idea that he was thinking of launching this, and if I can help him in marketing. And then when you start seeing the results, then it becomes a drug, and you want to do more and more of it.
Right.
And we started to work together to market it, to enlarge the database. At that time, it was only search and discovery. So we used to go around and collect menu cards. We used to scan them in office over the weekends, and we used to upload it to a website called foodebay.com.
Right.
And it started to do really well. We started getting some interest for restaurants to advertise on us. So that was sort of the first time we saw that this can become a business. And for about a year and a half, we were still in Bain and doing this on the weekends.
Right.
We used to call up our friends कि यार तू पुणे में है, बॉम्बे में है, मेन्यू इकट्ठे कर दे. In fact, if you go back, the person who helped in launching our Mumbai website, the first version was a very dear batchmate of mine, Amol Parashar.
All right.
He's also a very well-known alumni, a very well-known and established actor now. Similarly, Pune was launched by this classmate of mine who was a journalist and had time in the day.
Right.
So she offered to help. So it used to be like that. And then we got hold of DU students in Bain and said, यार Sunday है, तुम्हारे यहाँ पे मोमो गली है कोई, तो हमको ले चलो मेन्यू इकट्ठे कर लेते हैं. So it used to be that kind of weekend hobby.
Right.
But then it grew too big.
Right.
We decided to move on from Bain and focus only on Foodie Bay at that time.
Right. Wonderful. One thing that I can think of right now, listening to you is that hunger probably was there to explore. Even though नौकरी लग गई है and उस टाइम पे इतना कुछ वो नहीं था कि स्टार्टअप सबको करना है. अब तो ट्रेंड बन चुका है एक स्टार्टअप का. उस टाइम पे इतना नहीं था. So obviously that hunger was there within you as well, to explore. And was that more of an interest कि चलो देखते हैं क्या होता है? Was it like that, or you had a vision in your mind कि ये तो पक्का कुछ ना कुछ इस डायरेक्शन में करना है हमको अपने आप?
No, it was more of the first one.
Right.
कि देखते हैं क्या होता है इसका, देखते हैं क्या बनता है इसका.
Right.
And it started to do really well. Thankfully, product market fit.
Right.
It happened.
Right.
With the first version, the first iteration. And that's what, and it was one thing leading to another. And we were also very young at that time. And I had less than 1 year of professional experience before I started to work on this, as a hobby even.
Right.
In my life, I've worked as an employee only for 2.5 years.
Wow.
After that, we jumped the gun and went full-time into Zomato.
Right. So when you saw the results, actually, I'm guessing your hunger and your interest in doing something of your own, or just exploring, also grew exponentially.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
I never thought I'll do something of my own.
Right. And बहुत लोग बोलते हैं, there's always a debate कि नहीं यार किसी कंपनी में जाके पहले एक्सपीरियंस ले ले, 4-5 साल वहां बिता, कैसे चलता है, कैसे होता है, क्या नहीं होता है. But like you said, you have probably 2.5 years experience of WorkX, and at Bain also it was like, while at Bain you were already starting with this. So any anecdotes on that कि right direction होती है कुछ इस चीजों में कि you just have to believe in your instinct and your gut and what your gut says actually?
Yeah, it's actually more on the instinct and the gut. You can't plan for these things.
Right.
Serendipity,
Yeah.
कहते हैं ना जिसे.
Right.
It's more of that. If you plan these things कि मैं ये करूँगा, फिर step 2 ये होगा, उतनी देर में जो कंपनी है वो भी ऐसा रूल निकाल देगी कि मुझको sabbatical या कुछ ऐसे मिल जाएगा.
Right.
You don't have all those things in your hands.
Right.
So it always happens by chance, and then the call you take by the gut is what drives you. I have hardly met someone who's built a company for 10 plus years who planned to do something and then, I mean,
right,
कि कोई और जॉब में था, फिर उसको पता था ये होगा, कभी नहीं पता होता.
So like you had mentioned, you actually met Dipinder for the first time at Bain itself. So you weren't connected to him at IIT Delhi. All right. So while I was doing my research, I got to something where I read that you and Dipinder used to play a lot of foosball at Bain, and you were rather very good and used to win all the time over Dipinder.
Yeah.
How true is that? If you can give us some insights on that.
Must be true. Because foosball is not a skill-based game, right? You need to develop the power in the wrist to be able to play really well. And the reactions and the familiarity की ball कहाँ जाएगी? Clearly, I spent a lot of time on the foosball board. But I remember we used to spend a lot of time on the foosball board and go home late. At one time, I was very good at the foosball table in that office.
Right. One thing that I really wanted to ask was the change of name, like you said, पहले Foodlet था, which जो Dipinder ने start करा था, which didn't work out, and then it was Foodie Bay,
yeah.
And then it was Zomato, and it stuck on since forever. So how and why was the change in name something that you felt was necessary?
So when we had started Foodie Bay, we kept the name for about 2+ years, and then around that time in 2010, we realized that eBay.com, they had owned the eBay trademark or whatever, and a lot of other websites which were ending with Bay, who were trying to be like marketplaces or platforms, they were made to change the name, or they were made to do something to the domain or the brand name. And at that time, our investors, InfoEdge, had also shared the same concern. So we knew we had to change the name. We were looking for different domain names available. So when you have a website, the domain name is very important. Right. More so than the brand at times. And we found a Zomato.com available. It was very expensive at that time. We maxed out 4 credit cards to pay for the domain name. If I remember right. All of it, and we were all very young, so the credit limits were not much.
Obviously, yes.
But we bought the domain name, and the reason for taking up Zomato was that it was very catchy. It was Zomato, 3 sounds, 6 letters. Very easy to spell what you hear. And also you could explain it to people like it's a tomato with a Z. So very easy to make a connect with food. While being a non-food brand name on its own. So that's why we went on with Zomato as the brand.
Zomato है कि Zomato है?
अरे यार अभी तुम US में जाओगे तो Zomato है. इंडिया में Zomato है. ब्रिटिश इंडिया में Zomato ही था. But yeah, it's however you pronounce it, people will understand the spelling.
They'll know exactly किसके बारे में बात करें, which is the most important thing as well of a brand, right? Once Zomato happened, you were there for a while, and obviously it grew exponentially. I also remember because when Zomato was really getting there, I was in my college, and I'm a big foodie as well. From Zomato going to Shift, which is from food going into more into health and nutrition
Yeah.
and fitness. How did that transition happen? And if you can just shed some light on that
Sure,
as
sure.
well.
So I moved on from Zomato in 2018 after 10 years. So took a break. My co-founder in Shift, Pooja, was also one of the early members of Zomato. She had also moved on a few months before I did. So while we were going through our own independent journeys of what to do next, at that time there was all this ed tech was growing, clean tech, healthcare,
Right.
fintech.
Right.
All of these were areas that were growing at a fast pace and were buzzing
Right.
in the startup ecosystem. I think somewhere we stuck on to health and wellness. Could have also been that, we were in that age group, having spent 10 to 15 years taking our body through so much,
Yeah.
working 16-hour plus days, eating a lot of food that one should not be,
Right.
drinking a lot of liquor that one should not be.
Right.
I think all that realization might also have played a part.
Right.
But health and wellness was one field where we saw that we could create value.
Right.
It was not about there's a difference in saying there's an established industry and
Right.
you're aggregating or scaling things up.
Right.
It was not that. We wanted to, we also saw that wellness would give us that opportunity to create value.
Right.
And we sort of stuck onto that idea. Typically, when you think of an idea, you want to mull over it for a few months.
Yeah.
Before you jump
Right.
into it. So I think it stuck around for both of us. And we started with a brand called Mind House,
Right.
focused entirely on mental health and wellness. We started off with, in fact, meditation studios.
Right.
But then 3 months later, COVID happened and we moved everything up online, and then yoga came in, nutrition became an important part of the business. Then we rebranded to Shift because Mind House was very focused on mental health. And then, so with Shift, we were focusing on nutrition and yoga.
Right.
So physical health. Then about 6 or 8 months back, we thought we should reintroduce Mind House.
Right.
So now we run 2 separate brands under the company. One is called Shift, which, like I just said, is all about nutrition and yoga. The other brand is called Mind House, wherein we help connect people to the right therapist, counselor.
Right.
And that's our biggest focus.
Right.
We also have meditation content,
Right.
which is a large part of the offering, but that's completely free for people. So yeah,
That's wow.
That's the journey.
So with obviously launching Mind House right before COVID, and then going into the business, and then COVID happening. Obviously, a lot of business got affected.
Yeah.
During that time, but you managed to stay not just afloat, but venture out into a different direction as well. Was that something that you had the confidence because of the fact that आपके पास काफी experience है? You obviously put out a lot of fires during your years at Zomato.
Yeah.
So did you feel safe and confident कि हाँ ठीक है, ये हम कर लेंगे, we'll manage it. It's not that much of a worry. Did you have that thing?
So it was not that we were not worried, because it was a lot of unknown, right? COVID, our generation has not seen a war, right? Our generation has not seen a situation like COVID. This was the first for our generation, for our lifetimes.
Right.
So it was a lot of unknown. We had the surety that we will come out of it. And we were like, this is not the worst thing that we have dealt with.
Right.
This too shall pass.
Right.
Was our sort of confidence in the situation. But we were still very worried because we had started with an offline
Right.
business model.
Right.
We were starting to make a revenue that was growing and making sense.
Yeah.
And suddenly we had to like bring the business
Right.
down to zero,
Right.
move it online.
Right.
Had no idea what was going to pick up. Thankfully, we got a lot of signals while we were online and started to move into yoga and nutrition.
Right.
But yeah, and it wasn't a very comfortable
Right. Yeah.
ride through COVID.
And also, obviously, I mean, now, you know, mental health, wellness, nutrition is really, really going.
Yeah.
It's really growing, especially post-COVID in India, at least. You know, we see a trend in people really looking after their health and mental health as well.
Yeah.
West May, it was established. So, you know, you were one of the first players in that manner where you were venturing into this. So, I'm sure there were a lot of risks and everything involved. But I'm sure you and your co-founder, like you had mentioned, you know, through figuring out कि fintech hai, edtech hai, was there an inclination कि हमको ये, like you said, value के लिए करना है? So obviously that social community and social aspect also was involved when you started Shift.
I think if you're creating an impact, you're adding value, you're solving someone's problem.
Right.
Right. And that gives you a lot of gratification.
Right.
So even today when we see the kind of feedback or the kind of testimonies we get from our customers,
Absolutely.
that's very gratifying and satisfying, right? So that always goes down extremely well.
Yeah.
So that's always a factor.
That's always a factor.
Yeah.
Like I said, you know, IIT से इतने ज़्यादा अब हो गए unicorns and entrepreneurs. Do you feel like at your time at IIT Delhi, did the institute prepare you for a life as well?
I think the rigor did. And it's also a choice. I don't think every student has to go through it.
Right.
There are people who choose to go through it because of the choices they make while at campus.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's when you go through the rigor, you get prepared for something, right? As has been the case now for, I think, 20 odd years, or at least when I got in, I knew I'm not 95%, I'm not going to pursue a career that is related to my education.
Right.
My BTech,
Right.
basically. I am going to end up taking up a job into something else.
Right.
So what are you trying to get out of the 4 years apart from the education? So I think it's a choice that some students end up deriving things that help them get prepared for life after campus. Some people don't.
Right.
And I think it's what you get from the 4 years of engineering at an IIT depends a lot on you, because there are also decision months, you know, when there is a recruitment happening.
Right.
Campus hai,
Right.
internships hain,
Right.
CAT hota hai, right, to get into IIMs. Kuch log GRE or GMAT dete hain. So it's always there. And then you used to refer to seniors कि अच्छा वो वहाँ गया, वो क्या कर रहा है,
Right.
वो सुना है ऐसा कर रहा है, ये वहाँ गया, all of that.
Continuous conversation
Yeah.
चलती ही रहती है वो. Like you said कि fourth year अगर पता होता, third year अलग थोड़ा कर लेते शायद, है ना? Yeah. Anything that really inspired you at the campus, you know, or like the faculty or some friends that really inspired you? Anything, any light that you would like to shed on that?
I think one big sort of awareness that hit me was, you know, what is it like to be street smart? Because I come from a very protected childhood,
Right.
or upbringing or schooling,
Right.
so to say. Because, like I said, we were in a research center, and my mom and dad, they work for the DAE.
Right.
Who DAE has their townships. So in Indore, we had like a township with a lake. So we were in in a resort. It was our own world. and we never had to go out and deal with people.
Yeah.
That was a big learning I got. And I think most of the hostelers were like me. Very innocent, naive. And then when you met the attaches, or the day scholars, people who live in Delhi, they bring a very different
I bet.
perspective to life.
I bet.
I think that was a big culture shock to me, a big learning period.
Right.
I think, that was one. Then I think there were a lot of facilities here. I picked up a bunch of stuff here. I learned squash. I was always playing tennis as a kid, but I learned squash here. I picked up drums. So, I think having a busy but a balanced life was also turned out to be very important for me. It still is.
Right.
I still follow that. One thing I did was I was too busy on campus at times. I used to do everything.
Right.
I used to play tennis, फिर फुटबॉल भी खेलना चालू कर दिया मैंने.
Nice.
तो I was like सुबह यहाँ शाम को वहाँ बीच में म्यूजिक का इवेंट हो रहा है या कुछ हो रहा है. But I think that's also those discussions also help you reflect, and
they do,
right? Those debates that end up happening,
they do
on campus. They also build deeper relationships, relatability.
Right.
People get to know you better, and hence you get better advice.
Right.
तो वो I think थोड़ा सा मिस कर दिया मैंने, मुझे भी लगता है. But it's fine.
उसके लिए तो टाइम ही टाइम है, लेकिन
हाँ, बट लोग फिर चले गए ना.
वो भी एक बात है. That's also फुटबॉल, टेनिस, स्क्वॉश, ड्रम्स. आप पढ़ाई कब करते थे?
यार मैं so I was, disclaimer, I had a 7.9.
Okay.
GPA not very bad, not good either.
Sounds pretty nice.
नहीं, but it was mechanical में I was not my rank was not very high.
Okay.
But I used to I don't know यार, I had figured some balance.
You had figured it out.
हाँ.
कि बीच में टाइम निकाल लूँगा.
Because I also knew कि 95% I'm not going to pursue a career
in your own field.
Yeah. So I knew that I want to maintain a balance, but I don't want to completely get into 5s and 6s. Right. I think one semester I got a very bad GPA, and then I was like, ये सही नहीं है.
घर पे फोन करना पड़ा उसके टाइम पे कि नहीं? बताया?
हाँ, मैंने खुद ही पहले ही बता दिया था. मार्कशीट पहुंचने से पहले मैंने पहले बता दिया था कि इस बार अच्छी नहीं आई है मार्कशीट. क्योंकि स्कूल में तो पता था कि नंबर कहाँ कटे. अब यहाँ तो उल्टा होता था.
यहाँ पे तो
it's not easy to score high in
right. What's your, as an esteemed alumni, what is your vision for IIT Delhi? What is probably one thing that you would like to change, and one thing that should remain as it is? If you can just share that with us.
I think the rigor of the 4 years should remain. I don't know how it has varied from when I was here to now. I honestly don't know that. But I hope that stays high, because the rigor, there are different stages of life, right? You get into, you finish your education, and if you want to achieve a lot, you need to also work hard, right? Now, to be ready to work hard, this is honestly the only place that can teach you to work hard by yourself.
Thank you so much again, Pankaj, for coming today, taking out your precious time and coming to your beloved campus.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's our pleasure, and we hope to keep interacting with you. And it was wonderful.